Hey party people of College Park Baptist Church in Greensboro. I'm Lia Scholl, pastor of Wake Forest Baptist Church, and grateful to be sharing with you in worship in person on Sunday and also online with you today. Thank you for watching. In 2018, in a video addressing a no athletic shorts dress code policy at Saudi Daisy High School in Chattanooga, the school's athletic director said, if you really want someone to blame, blame the girls, because they pretty much ruin everything. They ruin the dress code, ask Adam, look at Eve. You can really go back to the beginning of time. So it'll be like that the rest of your life. Get used to it. Keep your mouth shut, suck it up, and follow the rules. Blame the girls because they pretty much ruin everything. Elizabeth Lesser, in her book, Cassandra Speaks, implores us to pay attention to our origin stories, like we're hearing voices from across the ages, the specific voices of the men and the missing voices of the women. So many of the stories impart the same things. Men are morally pure and noble. Women are the ones who succumb to evil and tempt the men. The old stories paint a wildly improbable description of what it means to be a woman, erotically seductive yet emotionally fickle, in need of protection yet dangerous, all at the same time. Who could trust such a creature? I understand from Pastor Michael that you're in a summer series called Are We There Yet? Oh Lordy, are we there yet? And you're examining journeys in the Bible. So let's begin with Abram's journey. As you know, the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in all of the families of the earth, in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Abram left Haran and settled in the land of Canaan at age 75. But a famine came. So Abram took his wife Sarai to Egypt. When they got to Egypt, Abram told Sarai to tell everyone she was his sister, and she ended up living in the harem of the Pharaoh. And because Sarai was still hot at 75, the Pharaoh was kind to Abram, giving him sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, female donkeys, and camels. And this is the beginning of the Hagar journey. She was likely one of those female slaves, part of Pharaoh's kindness. But in all honesty, Hagar is a sort of footnote in Abram's journey. We meet her in chapter 16 of Genesis, where we hear about Sarai's struggle with infertility. The text says she had an Egyptian slave girl whose name was Hagar, and Sarai said to Abram, you see that the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my slave girl. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. Hagar is a minor character, one whose presence may prove Elizabeth Lesser's point of women being in the text precisely to prove that men are morally pure and noble. And yet Hagar's journey may be one of the longest in the Bible. She went from Egypt to Canaan and then all the way to Assyria. She went from a slave girl to a concubine and surrogate to the mother of a prince of 12 tribes. She went from enslavement to freedom to queen of a new realm. What we know is that Hagar was a slave girl, that she was handed over to Abram, that she resented Sarai. The text says she looked with contempt on her mistress, and that Sarah was jealous and worried about the inheritance even after Isaac was born. We're told that Hagar tried to run away, but the angel of the Lord met her in the same way that the angel of the Lord met Mary, the mother of Jesus. The angel said to name her child Ishmael, the God who hears. And Hagar calls God El Roi, the God who sees. That same angel also told her to be submissive. It would be easy to paint this picture with broad strokes and say that Hagar was a rebellious slave, and that she was uppity, and that Sarah was an evil mistress. To be honest, neither Sarah nor Hagar come off as very good in this story. And maybe that's the point. Who comes off looking good? Who comes out looking like a righteous man? That's right, Abraham. Poor Abraham, having to duck the ire of Sarah when Hagar gives her dirty looks. Poor Abraham, the victim of Sarah's desire for a child. Poor Hagar, victimized by Sarah, but still being deserving of being run out on a rail. Who tells the story? Men. Who is the story meant to honor? Men. Blame the girls because they pretty much ruin everything. What if Hagar had written this story? Would she have talked about how old Abram was, how his skin was like papery leather? Would she tell us stories of non-consent and disassociation, of wishing and wanting to be somewhere else? Would she tell us a story of loss? Would she speak of different kinds of relationships with women, of allyship and friendship? What would she tell us about Sarah, the woman who, even at her advanced age, was so beautiful that she was taken into the harem of Pharaoh? The woman who took Hagar away from her home, her people, her language, her family. Would Hagar spit at the concept that Abraham and Sarah were something special? Or would she, as our poem today on the back of the bulletin that we heard, would she tell that story? Would she see a path of solidarity, a way out of the story of Abram and into her own story? Of course, we don't know the answer to these questions. But what the story of Hagar reminds us is that although Abraham would have these two women be simple, subservient, his sister and virginal mothers, what's really true is that the women are all of these things and none of these things, and so much more than these things could ever say, all at the same time. So I wonder, friends, are our stories today being told in a way that benefits men? Do we not hear of the women in the pulpit who ruined the church when the church called her too late? Do we not hear of the woman politician who is called radical when her male counterpart is heralded as a hero for promising the same changes? What about the countless girls who cried rape in the sports doctor's office? They were called troublemakers, liars, and so much worse. Is it not an expected trope even today that women will be competitive with one another, jealous of one another's success, fighting for whatever few resources are available, fighting for whatever little bit of power and advantage is available to them. But it is just that. It's a trope. Blame the girls because they pretty much ruin everything. The stories of Hagar and Sarah ring true to the stories that I have heard my whole life about women. But they do not ring true to my experience of women. We know that we, women of the world, are way more into cooperation than competition, except where competition is necessary, like the tennis courts. We know that we build caring, supportive relationships with our coworkers, our supervisors, our neighbors, all the women around us, and all the men around us too. We know that we care for one another and for our families and our communities, and that there are far more of us committed to equalizing relationships across racial lines, across ethnic lines, across class lines, than there are women who are tearing other women down. But there is one part of this text that rings true to me, and that is the part where God shows up. I'd like you to notice something. God promised Abram at that time, "I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing." God also makes a promise to Sarah, saying, "I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall give rise to nations. Kings of peoples will come from her." And God doesn't stop there. God shows up to Hagar too, promising 12 tribes, promising multitudes of offspring. When she first ran away, the angel said to her, "I will so greatly multiply your offspring that they cannot be counted for multitude." Then again, when she is driven out by Sarah and Abraham, an angel says, "Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him." God doesn't choose between these three people based on gender, based on class, based on where they're from, based on their marital status, based on what color their skin is, or even based on their religion. God shows up for all of them. And God is a God who sees. That's what the name Ishmael means. And God is a God who hears. That's what Elroy, the name that Hagar gave for God, means. It seems like such a long journey from being a footnote in the story to being the writers of our own stories. But know this: God sees us and hears us. Even when the writers of the Bible are trying to make certain men look good, we still get all the promises. Even though religion has used this book, the Bible, to marginalize folks, that was never God's intent. Just because we're not in the book all that much doesn't mean we're not fully there in the heart of God. God sees you. God hears you. And God has a promise for you too. You are in God's heart. And you know what? Blame the girls because they pretty much ruin everything. That, my friends, is just nonsense. Amen? Amen.